been in, actually, the one that you're holding the clicker, it's like a bunch of photos with me holding a clicker. And I'll go on iPhone on it. So, see, it's something we've got quite an exciting announcement, which is the release of Autopilot. And it's Autopilot version 1. And we still think of it sort of as a public beta. So we want people to be quite careful at first with the use of Autopilot. And but what I'm going to take you through is just how the system learns over time. The thing that's, I think, quite interesting and unique is that we're employing a fleet learning technology. Essentially, the network of vehicles is going to be constantly learning. And as we release the software, more people enable Autopilot, the information about how to drive is uploaded to the network. So each car, each driver is effectively an expert trainer in how the Autopilot should work. And I'll take you through a bit about how that works. But it's a combination of a variety of systems, and this can only really be done as a connected vehicle. And there's some things like every car made by Tesla from late September last year, overnight will have this ability. So I think that's quite unique that we can upload a substantial new capability just with software overnight. So and basically any car that has the sensors will have this ability. And the sensors were put into the car about a year ago. And the capability will keep improving over time, both from the standpoint of all the expert drivers doing approximately 1 million miles a day of travel and training, but also in terms of the software functionality. So this version of Autopilot, for example, does not take into account stop signs and red lights, but a future software update will. So one example of something. And we'll get more and more refined over time. And then there's a feature that I've been promising for a while, which will be probably 7.1, which is to automatically have your car put itself to bed in the garage. So you can just tap your phone and have the car just put itself into the garage and close the door, and also summon the car back. So that'll be in 7.1. So there'll be a lot of cool capability that comes out over time, as well as just general refinements of the driving experience. So let's go to slide 1. So you have a car on the road, and the question is, how does it figure out what to do? So there's 4 major sensor systems. We've got the ultrasonic sensors, so essentially ultrasonic sonar, which gives us, it tells us where everything is within about 5.2 meter, or roughly 16 feet, or 16, 17 foot distance. So around the perimeter of the car, we know where there are obstacles. That's then combined with a forward-facing camera with image recognition. The forward-facing camera is able to determine where the lanes are, where cars are ahead of it, and it's also able to read signs. So it's been able to read speed signs for a while, for example, but it's able to read pretty much any sign. And then that's combined with the forward radar. The radar is very good at detecting fast-moving large objects, and it can actually see through fog, rain, snow, and dust. So the forward radar gives the car superhuman senses. It can see through things that a person cannot. And then the final sensor is the GPS with high-precision digital maps. So this is important. The high-precision digital maps are very important because normal maps have quite low precision. Like all that's needed is to know where a street is, but like the actual curvature of the road, how many lanes there are, how you merge from one lane to the next. This is not present in any data set in the world. but we're creating that data set at Tesla. So then these all combine. So we can use the camera, radar, ultrasonics, and the GPS with high precision maps to guide the car this journey. And has people had a chance to test drive? Okay. So you would have seen where the auto steer is using different visual cues or different road cues to decide where to drive. So it'll pick a left lane, right lane, or both. It'll determine whether it should follow vehicles, whether it should do holistic path prediction, or whether it should use the navigation database. And depending upon where it is, so it's constantly looking up where it is in the world, and depending upon its specific location, it will know whether to use the left lane marking, the right lane marking, follow vehicles, to use holistic path prediction, or to go purely on navigation, on GPS. So, and this really depends on where it is in the world. So, I don't know if you went down the 280, for example, but if you're in the rightmost lane of the 280, you'll see the car actually periodically red out the right lane because it knows that it should not take a tunnel. It needs to stay in its lane and not do a tunnel. And you'll see it at one point southbound on the 280, the rightmost lane takes an abrupt shift to the left. So it just steps to the left arbitrarily. The car does not change its position in lane, just because it knows to ignore that sudden step change in the rightmost lane. And then this is an example of one of the hardest problems that we had to solve. Like where does it get super hard? This is the 405 South, just before you get to LAX. And you can see how hard it is. This is actually camera footage we took this morning. Like it's quite hard as a person to say where's the lane. We really need better lane markings in California. This is crazy. If you're in Germany and Japan or China, this would be great. Like it'd be easy because you can actually see clear lane markings. But if you have that, I mean, this is the lane, which are like little bits. I don't know what marking out the lane. And what becomes really problematic in a situation like this is that you've got where the concrete seam is and where the old lane markings used to be are diverging from where the current lane markings. So the problem we encountered, which was quite vexing to solve, was that the vision system could not figure out which is the actual real lane. And normally you can exclude sort of strange figments on the road, or like skid marks or whatever, because they're not where the lane is. But in this case, you have the true lane position and the sort of fake lane position, and they're diverging. So the camera system would then follow the diverging system and go into the wrong lane. And so in order to solve this, at this point, the car knows that it actually needs to go on navigation GPS. So we'll go for its lateral position, will be guided by the GPS for its lane position, and ignore visual. And a sort of funny anecdote that we had was when we did this, we realized, okay, we've got to have times when the system will automatically revert to navigate on GPS, where the visual cues are actually misleading. So we had one of our drivers in a car actually drive this exact section to precisely map out the lanes. We knew for sure where the lanes would be. Then we implemented the system, and yet once again the car would change lanes when it shouldn't change lanes. This is because the human driver, who is a trained driver, actually made the lane change wrong. Okay, so it was quite perplexing for a while. Like, why is it going on GPS and making the wrong move? It's because the reference driver actually made the wrong move. So, so we corrected that, and now you can actually do this in any of the lanes, and it will hold position correctly. It will actually do better than the person. This is to give you a sense of what the level of precision that the Tesla fleet is attaining in terms of figuring out where roads are, where parking lots are. This is all just in a statistical database. So there's no user attribution. We don't know who it was, when it was. It's just, we know that this is where a road exists. This is where cars have gone, statistically speaking. And so you can see that the Tesla user fleet has basically mapped out the entire Bay Area in this map. And all the way down to the parking lot. You can actually see where in the parking lot people went. Or what constitutes a real parking lot versus not. This is a normal navigation map, which is fine for general directions, but it's not great for figuring out where the car can actually go. So, whereas this is a high precision map, so you can see that each lane is mapped out. And you know exactly what the transitions are. And you know that, for example, here, you don't make an abrupt, 90-degree left turn. You actually make a curve. And you can see, little places like here, if you were to follow the GPS, you would flip the curve. But actually, what you want to do is do a curve like that. So that's was the basic presentation. I think this is going to be quite a profound experience for people when they do it. And we've been testing it for over a year. So we got quite used to it, but I've noticed that when I put friends of mine in the car and they see the car drive, they're blown away. It's really quite an interesting new experience. I think it's going to change people's perception of the future quite rapidly. With that, what questions can I answer?
I'm going to come to you, and we'll switch to the people on the phone.
Yeah. By the way.
Nick James with Mashable was thinking about the side collision monitoring warning system. And it said in the little packet that even if it is disabled in the vehicle menu, that even if it detects an obstacle, it'll move within your lane around around the obstacle. What is the purpose of having it still active even if the owner has deactivated?
Yeah, there's two elements there. One is when Autopilot is activated, it's using the ultrasonic sensors to see if it's impinging on a vehicle nearby. So, let's say there's a large truck, like an oversized truck next to you on the freeway. You don't want to be in the middle of your lane. You want to be offset to one side of the lane. So that's active, obviously, when AutoSteer is active. However, we also have side collision avoidance, which is active all the time. You can't turn it off. So this is not something you can't turn off, but it's separately turned off. It's like automatic emergency braking, essentially. The side collision avoidance, what it will do is it will resist movement. If you attempt to turn into another vehicle or into, let's say, a highway barrier without realizing it, you'll feel increased resistance in the steering wheel. And so you'll feel like, well, there's something unnatural here. That's you can overcome it if you want to, but it's going to tell you that you probably shouldn't move sideways because you can sense it's getting harder to move the steering wheel to one side or the other. It's a sort of general safety system along with automatic emergency brake. That's also released this version 7.
Thanks very much. My name is Arthur with NPR. 2 questions for you. In the last few months, we've seen cars being called off, Jeep, Wagon. And in this rollout, you're making a point about what you can do in the software. So I guess the first question is, what are you telling us that we should expect as consumers from automakers as in our cars in terms of software engagement? And then separately, I want you to talk about quickly, there is a debate about whether software in vehicles should be subject to copyright law protections or disclosed related software.
Sure. So I think really car makers need to think of their cars as connected devices, and that's really the way a car should operate, much as the way your laptop or your cell phone operates, so that you can do improvements over the air. So you can either do, instead of having to recall them, and if you issue a recall, you don't always get all the cars coming in. But for various reasons, people lose touch with the dealer, and then they may have unsafe software in the car but not know it because they didn't get the recall notice. We're aware of it. So I think it is important for safety and for improved functionality that car makers in general go to a connected philosophy. And that's, I think, also what consumers expect these days. It's kind of odd to have a device that's not connected. And with respect to software, I don't know. I mean, I think there's pros and cons to having software all out there. I mean, it is hard to say how software will work if it's not actually in the target hardware. And so if you look at the software and say, well, this it's hard to say it is or isn't going to work unless you've actually got the target hardware. So I'm not sure if there's that much value to open sourcing the software. And I would be concerned about people potentially exploiting issues. But I think what really matters is are companies thoroughly testing the vehicle and testing the software, making sure that it's good. That's the most important thing is just test it, and you really need to see the hardware-software interaction to know if it's safe.
Sage from Reuters. Can you talk about, it states very clearly that this is hands-on, even though we know that you can't have your hands off. Can you talk about the regulatory hurdles that you anticipate so that you can tell your customers, please take your hands off, and what you anticipate and how that's going to work?
Yeah, we're being especially cautious at this early stage. So we're advising drivers to keep their hands on the wheel just in case, because the software is still at an early stage. So it's important that people exercise caution at the beginning. Over time, there will not be a need to have your hands on the wheel in the long term, but in the short term, I think it's very important that people exercise caution because the software is very new. And so we actually explicitly describe it as beta. Even though people can access it, we describe it as beta, and we say keep your hands on the wheel because it's just important to exercise great caution at this early stage. But certainly in the long term, people will not need hands on the wheel, and eventually there won't be wheels. There won't be wheels or pedals. They'll just be jump in a car and go somewhere. And tell the car your destination, and it'll take you there. But in order for that to occur, you need to be fail operational. So that if any one system in the vehicle fails for any reason, the car does not crash. So that's still some ways away. Well, I think the regulators need to seek their evidence that the reliability is there, that the reliability in a hands-off situation is not worse than a hands-on. So that I think there's time and a lot of information needed in order to make that case. I don't think we should try to make that case right now because the data is not there.
Hi, Dana Hull from Bloomberg. Could you talk a little bit about the early access program and the kind of feedback that you got from the customers that have already been testing this? I guess they've had it for maybe a month or so, and like what was the biggest feedback that you got, and how did that help you redefine and make the software better?
Yeah, we've actually gotten a lot of feedback for quite a while. So that we had the sort of early access program. Customers actually had the software for, in some cases, several months. In most cases, at least a few months. And their feedback has helped us make it better. You keep making it better. And generally, the response has been that they really love it. They think it's quite profound, and I mean, we have anecdotes of customers that have actually canceled their vacations because there was a new update in the software. So they really liked it. But I think the feedback is all kind of fairly obvious stuff. I mean, it's necessary but obvious. The car didn't behave correctly in this particular location, and so what do we do about that? And a lot of it is it's actually automatic. So without people actually having to send us a note, we can see that there was an intervention. So when we look at say a map, we can see where did drivers assume manual control, and if we see that a lot of drivers are taking manual control at the same point, then we know that there's something wrong with the software at that point. Whereas if it's just randomly distributed, it means somebody just decided to go from automatic to manual and back. But if it's always at the same place on a highway, we know that there's some issue that needs to be looked into. So that sort of automated reporting has been the most helpful for improving the system. We can see that it's always at this particular juncture that the car does something wrong, we take manual control. Then we go look at that location, see what the issue is, and fix the software. Yeah, it's been tested in, I think, most of the markets that Tesla's operating in. Yeah, so it seems to work quite well. It does tend to work better in places where there are clear markings on the road. So it works really well in Germany, for example. Yes, it works best where the infrastructure is good. In order for it to work really well, you want clear markings on the road, or you want it to be in quite dense traffic. So those are the two places where it works really well. It's a real boon in a high traffic situation. So if you're in slow moving gridlock traffic, turn on Autopilot, and it works super well. And almost to the point where you can take your hands off. I wouldn't say you can take your hands off, but almost. Some people may. We don't advise that. Sure.
Hi, Greg, American TechCrunch. So with Tesla and a couple other teams, each kind of independently working on this problem, do you guys have to worry about logical conflicts within these independent code bases? Just the cars not really knowing how to react to each other when it's not a human driving?
Well, the density of cars that have Autopilot is pretty low. So I think it'll be a while before we have to worry too much about it. But I mean, we essentially make, in Autopilot, we try to make the car behave as though it's a really good chauffeur. It's like it was like a really good driver, but not too conservative, not too aggressive. So when the cars interact with each other, I would think they would actually, it would just be like as though the car's interacting with a good human driver. So we don't really see any issues with code interaction. That's right. There's nothing to say.
Hey, Marco Della Cava with USA Today. Similar question. Got Audi working on Pilot Assist pretty aggressively. BMW at CES last year showed us their self-valeting car. How important is it to you personally and to Tesla to try and be first, though, on these things?
Well, I mean, in general, Tesla, we try to pioneer new technology. I mean, I think there's the two biggest, the two most profound innovations in automotive since the moving production line are electrification and autonomy. So it makes sense to try to pioneer things in those two arenas. Those things really make a difference to the world, individually and collectively, they make a difference. So, but it's not, the goal is not to be first for the sake of being first. We just want to make an amazing vehicle. And make the best possible car that could be made. That's really all. We've gotten some pretty good accolades in this regard. Some reports that to adjust the rating system. That was before Autopilot. So,
David Baker with the Chronicle. I wanted to follow up on the question that the reporter from Reuters was asking. So far, there's been sort of a perceived difference in philosophies in different autonomous car programs, whether you want to push toward a future where you don't have the steering wheel, you don't have pedals, or whether you want a future where you still do have cars that people can drive on these great roads that we've got parts of the world.
right.
Do you want a future where you just get a little pod and it takes you wherever and you don't worry about it? Or do you want a future where people drive your car down the road and love driving your car?
I think you want to have. I think you probably want to have a steering wheel and pedals and be able to take control of the car when you want to take control. I don't super love the idea of sort of having a bland little pod that you just get in and go from one place to the other in a very sort of conservative driving manner or something like that. Sounds boring. But it might be, something like an iRobot where the car has autonomous mode, but you can switch to manual when you want to. And the steering wheel comes out of the dash. Looks kind of cool. That would be cool. Like a snake charger. So I think autonomy default, but with optional manual is probably the good way to go.
Elon, I want to give folks on the phone a chance to ask questions.
Sure.
Go ahead on the phone.
Okay, so our first question is going to come from, hello, Yahoo Autos? Yes, this is Chuck Tanner with Yahoo Autos. I'm wondering, how does the Autopilot, how do you perceive the Autopilot as differing from similar technology from, say, Audi or Mercedes, such as the adaptive cruise control, stop and go, and their lane keeping technology as well?
Yeah, I think the big differentiator here is that the whole Tesla fleet operates as a network. When one car learns something, the whole fleet learns it. And in order to have that, all the cars need to be connected. They need to be sort of uploading data to a central server where it can be collected, do statistical analysis on it, and then feed that back into a driving algorithm to the cars. So that's sort of I would say like next level, and certainly far beyond what any other car company is doing. I'm not sure they even are thinking about it. Never heard them mention it, but we put it that way. So being able to do fleet learning, I think this is quite a powerful network effect. And any car company that doesn't do this will not be able to have a good autonomous driving system.
Next question.
Hi, Katie Fairbrooker, Fortune. Are you talking about machine learning? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it is kind of machine learning. And it is with the drivers of the cars being essentially providing the training data set for they're training a collective fleet intelligence of for Tesla.
Yeah. Well, will it be like an automatic learning system, or is
it is an automatic learning system.
Okay. I have another question too.
The obvious question is like, if I'm so afraid of AI, why am I doing this?
And
I don't think we have anything to worry about with cars driving themselves. That's not, they're not going to take over the world. The concern would be more like a deep AI, and potentially one that's, some sort of, some sort of AI that, either due to itself or people driving in that direction, makes the world, tries to drive civilization in a direction that's not good. I don't know. I just think we need to be cautious about this. That's all. That's my general comment on AI. It's like we shouldn't be sort of going willy-nilly in that direction, thinking it's always going to be good.
Okay. My follow-up was actually about the mapping system. So the data available in like Google Maps or Here Maps or Apple Maps or something, that's not good enough data for the autopilot driving system currently. So do you plan to do this combination of these like personal drivers, right, driving around, Tesla employees driving around and getting that data plus the Tesla fleet? Are you going to be doing that for like, the world when you get all this data for the high precision maps that you want?
Yeah, I think the data is really going to come primarily from the Tesla fleet. So we've got, cars that are doing 1.5 million miles a day, of which 2/3 have the autonomy capability. But all 1.5 million actually are connected and can provide information about high precision information about routes. And I think we certainly be open to selling that to other car companies or other organizations if they want to buy it. But it's really the fleet collectively that is producing this data set, and then we're using that to provide high precision GPS navigation. You do need an additional overlay on that to understand like turn restrictions. To a certain degree, because if you simply say like if the number of cars that say turn left at an intersection is 0.5% of the time, then it's probably they're just doing illegal acts. So that you should ignore that. You should only you'll see statistically if a turn is allowed or not allowed. And you can also say, okay, the speed, that the true speed on these roads is the speed, and then you know how fast to go around a bend, or what's really safe. You can say like the average driver goes this speed in this lane, and when doing this turn. So that's that level of detailed information, which is like how would an expert driver drive this route, is really what we're talking about. It's an order of magnitude or more detailed than current navigation maps. It might be like in terms of data volume, maybe 100 times the data complexity of current navigation maps, maybe more.
We have a lot of people patiently waiting on the phone. So Ken, can we let's take the next 3 calls from the phone line. Go ahead.
The line of Nikki at Transport Evolved is now open.
Good afternoon, Elon. I've got 2 questions really that I'd like to pose to you. The first one regarding GPS and data access. I know that if you're in the Bay Area, we have a lot of great cell phone connectivity, but in certain parts of the US and certain parts of the world, that's not going to be a big issue. That is going to be a big issue, and connectivity is going to be lost. How will the cars automatically switch between the modes? That's my first part. And the second part is Google, Audi, all these other companies who have worked on autonomous driving to this point. Some of them have posted massive bonds to be able to test some kind of autonomous or autopilot feature on the road. Has Tesla had to put anything like that into provision if there's any accidents in the future?
Well, as far as of sort of gathering navigation data where there's no cell connectivity, I mean, the car can just buffer the data, and then upload the data once it gets to a place where there is cell connectivity or a Wi-Fi connection. So there's no problem collecting data even where there's no cell phone connectivity. And then of course the GPS satellites you can see all the time. So even in anywhere on Earth you can see the GPS satellites. So whether or not you have the connectivity in that area, you can still use the drive on GPS functionality. With respect to posting big bonds, I'm not aware of that. I'm not sure what they're doing exactly in that front. I think the logical thing is that if there are fewer accidents in autonomous mode than in non-autonomous mode, there shouldn't be some penalty. That wouldn't make any sense. then you'd be penalizing a safer situation. So, next question.
Okay, the line of Mike Ramsey from Wall Street Journal is now open. Hi, thanks a lot. I'm curious about two things. One, after the updates are uploaded and improvements are made, are those done in constant stream, like on a daily basis, or are you waiting for would you wait for like a 7.1 or something like that? And the second question is as you move past this level of autonomy to something greater, would you need to add more sensors like a LiDAR, or do you think that it would be possible to go to a greater level of autonomy with the sensor set that you have now?
Yeah. I think we can go to we can improve the level of autonomy with the sensor set that we have right now, but it is limited to what logically could be done with the sensor set. So imagine if you had a remote control car and you had access to this set of data, which is a forward-facing camera, forward radar, and 360-degree ultrasonics. If you could see that data remotely and you're a really good driver with a remote control car, how well could you drive the car? That essentially sets the limit on what the sensors can do. So there's certainly more that can be done, but it's not, the sensor suite is not the sort of full autonomy suite. For full autonomy, you'd obviously need 360-degree cameras. You'd need probably redundant forward cameras. You need redundant computing hardware, and then like redundant motors in the steering rack. Like you really want to have, I think, for full autonomy, a more comprehensive sensor suite and control systems and computing systems that are fail operational. That said, I don't think you need LiDAR. I think LiDAR, you can do this all with passive optical, and then with maybe one forward radar, or if you're driving fast into rain or snow or dust. I think that completely solves it without the use of LiDAR. I'm not a big fan of LiDAR. I don't think it makes sense in this context. We do use LiDAR for our Dragon spacecraft. We're docking with the space station. And I think it makes sense, and we do so for a lot of efforts developing that. So as long as I don't like LiDAR in general, it's just like I don't think it makes sense in a car context. I think it's unnecessary. Yeah. And sorry, what was the first part of the question? Oh yeah, sorry. Sure. Sorry. So updates. Actually, people should see the car actually improve probably with each passing week. So even without a new software update, because the data is continually improving, because the more miles that are driven, the better the sort of network intelligence the fleet is trained, the better it will get. So it should actually get better, with each passing day. But you'll probably notice it maybe after a week or a few weeks, and you'll see that previously the car wouldn't have steered quite right, like let's say going past a freeway off ramp one week, but then the following week it does.
Next question. Daniel Sparks, Smiley.
And our next question.
Yeah. Is there any consideration for offering a retrofit option of Autopilot hardware to early Model S owners at some point?
So the tricky thing with the retrofit is it would require changing a lot of systems on the car and a new wiring harness. So it's not as though we wouldn't, if we thought there was some reasonable way to offer a retrofit, we would do so, but to be able to add a radar system and a camera system and some additional computing hardware and the 360 ultrasonics, this would be a huge effort to do at the service center. You'd have to replace the front bumper, the windscreen, take the whole car apart to remove the wiring harness. So it's technically possible, but there's no way it would make any financial sense.
Let's take one more call from the phone line.
So Bob from Road and Track Magazine.
Hi, I was just wondering how weatherproof is the lane sensing feature? Like, can it see the lane lines through rain or through snow? What are the limitations there?
Yeah, if there's heavy snow, it's going to be harder for the system to work. So we'd certainly advise caution in heavy precipitation. I mean, essentially, it's like a person to some degree. It's like how well can a person figure out what route they should take, that they're going to be in the beginning. It's going to be not as good as a person, but then over time, or not as good as a person in some ways, better than a person in other ways. Over time, it will actually be better than a person. Yeah. I mean, long term, it'll be way better than a person. Because it's like, you just say, imagine like a system that has, say, 8 cameras and radar and ultrasonics, and it's processing all of that at the millisecond level and never gets tired, and it's never had anything to drink, and it's not arguing with someone in the car, hopefully, so it's not distracted. Yeah, and it has this huge data set. There's just no way that would be like competing with 8 human experts simultaneously. It'd be there's just no way one person's going to be better than, you don't have eyes in the back of your head. It's like, so it will obviously be way better than the person wants.
We're going to come back into the room, take some questions from them.
It's congratulations from the FT. How does it handle pedestrians at the moment?
Sure. So, it should not hit pedestrians, hopefully. So it does sense pedestrians. It can see pedestrians. It can see cyclists. So it should avoid them, or it should actually brake before hitting them, it should handle them well, hopefully. Exercise caution at this early stage. Sorry?
The pedestrian can't exercise caution because the pedestrian doesn't know which is a self-driving car and which isn't.
Are you talking about the car today or the car in the future? There's a difference between the car today and the car in the future. Big differences.
There's meaning today.
Yeah. That's why we, in the beginning, we really recommend that. In fact, instructions say you need to pay attention to what's on the road, and you need to be ready to take the wheel at any time. So I certainly wouldn't want to say that today. Don't worry about it. In the long term, it will be safer than a person driving for all pedestrians as well as for people in the car and other cars.
I had a couple of logistical questions. When will the update be available, and to how many cars? When will the 7.1 coming? And what about the Model X?
We're not going to do Model X questions today. But when will it work on the Model X? We expect to begin uploading the software tonight to customers. So sometime late tonight it'll begin uploading, and people should begin to be able to install it tomorrow. It'll probably take a few days to send it out to the whole fleet, but it'll start sometime tonight. And then that's for North America. For Europe and Asia, it's about a week out because we're just waiting for final regulatory approval. So we're hopefully we'll receive regulatory approval for Europe and Asia sometime next week. Well, actually, all cars will receive version 7, and then roughly 60% of those cars. So there's roughly 60,000 cars that have autonomous capability. But all cars will receive version 7. Just they mostly won't have the auto steer and all of that.
Hi, Reuters. This could possibly be a pretty expensive add-on, since the future is looking like it makes sort of
inexpensive mass market car. Do you see this being something that is standard on all Teslas going forward, or an option you can remove in order to have it more affordable? Well, the way we make the cars right now is that the hardware is standard on all cars, and then you pay to have the Autopilot convenience features. So the safety features are standard on all cars. So there'll be active emergency braking, side collision avoidance, lane departure warning. Basically all the safety features are standard on all cars. And then the convenience features you pay $2,500 to enable. So essentially, we actually take a slight loss on people that don't pay for the convenience features, and then we make a gain on those that do. So hopefully that works out. But I think in the long term, we would have the hardware for autonomy on all cars. Yeah. But that would just be an upcharge for the convenience feature.
I have 2 more questions on the phone. Go ahead, Ken.
Awesome. Hi.
So, a question from Jonathan at Ars Technica.
Hi. Yes. Going back to the future of autonomous cars, when do you think Tesla might be ready to start selling cars that are autonomous to level 4?
Well, I think from a technology standpoint, and it is important to distinguish these things because they are very, very different. Technologically, I think Tesla will have a car that can do full autonomy in about 3 years. So maybe a bit sooner, but I'm trying to recalibrate my sort of time predictions. I think, but I'm quite confident that within 3 years, the car will be able to take you from point to point, like basically from your driveway to work without you touching anything. You could be asleep the whole time, and do so very safely. However, from that point, to get regulatory approval for full autonomy is something that's going to vary by jurisdiction. So depending upon where you are in the world, and sort of how the sort of legal framework works and what the regulations are, that could be anywhere from another year to maybe several years. And I think the thing that would obviously be convincing to a regulator is to see lots of data about how autonomy is working. Is it safer or less safe than a human-driven car? And at the point at which the data says statistically that it's much safer to have autonomous cars, that's the point at which regulators will obviously be comfortable allowing full autonomy.
Another question from Deanne Durbin at the Associated Press.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. Can you just clarify, I think you spoke about it earlier, but I can't hear very well. Is the Model X going to get this capability? And also, if you are, if your car is automatically changing lanes and it gets in an accident, who is liable?
Yeah, so the Model X will of course also have the same Autopilot capability as the S. So they'll have identical capability. And I mean, if there's an accident, the driver of the car is liable. So we're very clearly saying that this is not a case of abdicating responsibility. The hardware and the software are not yet at the point where a driver can abdicate responsibility. That will come at some point in the future, but it is not the case today. These are still the early days.
Could you talk a little bit about how many people are actively working on Autopilot within Tesla? Because in terms of headcount, you guys are north of like 13,000 employees, right? So is there
14,000.
14,000. So what's the size of the unit? And I'm sure it's interdisciplinary. So I don't even know if calling it a unit is accurate.
Yeah, it's actually not a huge team doing Autopilot stuff. We've got maybe in terms of people just working Autopilot software, it's maybe 50 people. In terms of those working on the Autopilot hardware suite, it's maybe a little bigger, maybe 100 people, something like that. It will increase over time, but I mean, generally with software, you get amazing things done with small teams. and a small team will do much more radical improvements than a big team.
We'll attempt one more.
Okay.
It's a very nuts and bolts one. I'm not sure that I understood you clearly earlier. When people get this, when you get into their cars tomorrow and see it loaded up, do they have to pay to actually use the autopilot feature of a one-time payment?
Yeah, so it actually depends. People would have done this when they bought the car, but they can also do it after they own the car as well. So it's just basically $2,500 to activate the autonomous features forever. It's a one-time charge, and then the autonomous features will work forever. As I said, though, the safety features are automatically enabled on all cars. So even if somebody hasn't done that, they'll still get, for example, side collision avoidance as part of the version 7 software. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Elon. Thank you very much.